Thank you all so very much for being here, and welcome to this Melbourne Connect event, Advancing Economy with Technology. So before we begin, and for those attending today, we as Melbourne Connect would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're presenting on today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, as well as the traditional owners of the land that you are situated on, and acknowledge that Indigenous Australians have been custodians of the lands and waterways on this country that we call Australia for thousands of years. So we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And thank you for joining us. So my name is Gary Williams. I'm the creative producer of innovation at Melbourne Connect, which is part of University of Melbourne. And we're delivering this event for you here today. So thank you very much for joining us. This is part of the Melbourne Connect online event series for 2020. And what I want to do is share a screen with you. Just bear with me while I do the whole share thing from the keynote, just to give a little bit of a context for what Melbourne Connect is and when it will be in operation shortly. So I'll share my screen here. Hopefully that shows fine. Great. So Melbourne Connect is a forthcoming innovation precinct. It's launching on the site of the old Royal Women's Hospital at the end of 2020 and open for business at the start of 2021. Housed within the precinct will be the Melbourne School of Engineering, Melbourne Accelerator Program, the Melbourne or Australian node of Science Gallery International, which is very exciting, as well as the Centre for AI and Digital Ethics, Complex Human Data Hub. We'll have hackathon space, maker space, you name it. These are some renders of what the space will look like, and essentially a large amount of space to deliver events such as these for when we can gather in person once again. This is a shot of the spectacular Oculus area. And this is designed to foster, conversations around innovation and invention, conversations exactly like what we're having today. So I want to make reference to the people that we have here today. I'll briefly explain your titles and then do a little bit of an overview of what you do. But we'll come back to this screen so everyone can capture your details at the end as well. So we have David Rusenko, who's chiming in from San Francisco. Thanks for joining us, David. David is the General Manager of eCommerce for Square. Thank you for joining us. We also have Laure, who's the Head of Growth for Airwallex. Thanks very much for being here, Neil.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great. And also Shelli Trung, who's the Managing Partner of Reach Australia and Southeast Asia. Thanks for joining us, Shelli.
Hi, everyone.
So my name is Gary Williams, as I mentioned. I'll stop this share so we can get back to the presentation screen. And fundamentally, we are here for advancing economy and tech. So we're here to discuss financial technology initiatives for personal, commercial, enterprise application and the exciting growth unlocked. So we've got these great speakers with us. We'll be talking about e-commerce, payments, property technology, investment programs, driving growth in Australia and globally, and much, much more. So before we dive into our speakers' backgrounds, a tiny bit of housekeeping. We'll be going until 1:30 p.m, which is 8:30 p.m. your time, David, I think. So 1:30 p.m. today sharp. We're going to be recording this event, so we'll publish these events on our YouTube channel after it's completed. And we also have Zara Zainal joining us. You'll see chiming in from time to time. If you needed to see at the top of the presenter mode, Zara's there producing an amazing graphic recording, so you can click on that and check where the conversation is at as she scribes along. Thanks for joining us, Zara. All right, so I'll do a little brief overview. We're going to have a free-flowing conversation. We'll touch on some topics such as growth, expansion, new products, scale-up programs, partnerships, acquisition of users and more. But I want to invite people who are attending this event today to pose any questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen or in the chat function. It doesn't really matter. I'll curate those questions back to our speakers today as we go. We'll largely leave them towards the end, but if the mood strikes, we might put them towards our speakers as we go. And just so everyone knows, if you're having trouble seeing the full presentation, you can scroll to the top of your screen and select Fit to Window in the Zoom webinar function. So with that, I'm going to do an introduction very briefly for all of you based on your titles, and then we'll leap into some of the initial questions. So David Rusenko, he oversees development strategy and performance for Square's online commerce solutions, including e-commerce platform Square Online Store. Prior to joining Square, David was the founder and CEO of Weebly since its inception in 2006. Weebly was acquired by Square in 2018 for $365 million US. Thanks for joining us. David is an active angel investor in a number of companies as well. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here.
I briefly cut you off before. I do apologise, but I'll get you to elaborate a bit more on some of your background and what you're driving with Square upcoming, both locally in Australia and of course globally. Also joining us is Shelli Trung, Managing Partner for Reach Australia and Southeast Asia, which is part of Second Century Ventures. Reach is a scale-up program created by Second Century Ventures, an early stage technology fund backed by the National Association of Realtors, which contains a portfolio of 82 technology companies across both commercial and residential real estate. Thank you for joining us, Shelli. I know you're also quite an active property technology angel investor, and you've got a global portfolio. We'll hear a bit more about that and perhaps also a bit of your background in corporate innovation.
Excellent. Looking forward to sharing a bit more.
Great, thanks, Shelli. And also lastly, we have Laure, who's the head of growth at Airwallex. He leads their company's international growth and user acquisition strategy. He's got over a decade's experience working across marketing, strategy, tech and data science, and previously held roles at seekhotels.com, Expedia and Boston Consulting Group. Neil, thanks for joining us as well.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
You'll be able to tell us a bit about being Australia's fastest growing unicorn, I guess, amongst other things. But look, yeah. Let's start very quickly with the overview. I'll go to yourself, David, since you're the furthest away. Let's talk about the initiatives that you're driving. Let's talk about Square's growth in Australia, a bit of your background, and some opportunities that you see for Square, both locally and globally. Geez,
Sure.
that was a big span of stuff. Let's talk about a bit of your background, what you're working on currently, and where Square's heading in the near future.
Sure, and I'll keep it relatively short. My background, again, like you said, I started Weebly in 2006. We were acquired by Square in 2016. Weebly was a company that started initially to help to make it really easy for anyone to make a website. And then later on transition into websites and also online stores. We were a company that started online first for people that were really starting their business online. Our mission was always to help entrepreneurs succeed, which was, strangely enough, sort of exactly Square's mission, just a little bit flipped, where Square started off with more in-person commerce, and a lot of people know Square for that little white reader. You might have seen someone, take a card payment using Square hardware. And so with joining forces of the two companies, you being best in breed online, best in breed in person, and really creates a wonderful fit. Now our team is primarily focused on Square Online Store, which is sort of a really fantastic way for businesses of all kinds to be able to go online, digitize their operations, and bring their sales online. Obviously, and I know we'll be talking a bunch about this, but with COVID-19, that's become something that's just absolutely critical. It went from, a lot of businesses knew they should get online, and it went from, a bit of a nice to have that you could plan to do it over the next couple of years to something that all of a sudden people had to do in weeks, just to keep their businesses afloat. And so we've been very focused on continuing to very rapidly improve the product. Within a couple days of San Francisco going to shelter in place, we launched curbside pickup functionality, and then within a week we launched delivery functionality. So all that is also available, and is actually seeing great adoption in Australia, and I think obviously very, very similar needs from that perspective for businesses to go online.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about feedback from users and how that, influences, our rapid product development, etc. But yeah, specifically to Australia, so how long has Square been in operation within Australia, and how has it developed, over that period of time?
Oh, I think I muted myself. Yeah, so Square's been in operation for a few years now in Australia, and has initially expanded from just a small handful of products to now a much more fully featured suite of products. including Square Online Store that launched in Australia, a bit over a year ago. And I think, what's really remarkable about what Square offers is that its entire suite of products that integrate and that work really, really well together. And I think that's kind of the main selling point is, you have solutions for selling in person, you have solutions for selling online, you have solutions for offering both, pickup or to go, and also delivery, and all these things integrate really well. And if you're a restaurant and you obviously need to have the functionality to have that ticket print in the kitchen, or if you're a retailer and you need your inventory synced across locations, it's kind of one system and a whole suite of products that works really well together.
Yeah, for sure. Look, thank you, David, and we'll come back to some other elements, I guess, relating to expansion of Square online, in particular e-commerce, etc. Neil, I'd love to throw to you now to talk a little bit about Airwallex growth. Essentially, do you want to paint an overview for us of Airwallex's length of existence, where you've been and where you're going to over the next year or two, based on recent trajectory?
Yeah, sure. So Airwallex is a FinTech founded in Australia around 5 years ago, and our mission is very much to help digital businesses scale globally. Our initial product offering has always been API first, so we built a number of kind of payment and FX products that can be accessed by API. And that was kind of our initial success through those products, and actually in the China market, where there's just been rapid growth, right? Rapid companies going overseas. Since then, we've kind of expanded our API set. So we've also got not just payments and FX, but also card product and a payment gateway product, and from an API perspective. And now the next phase is really building a product layer on top of those APIs and targeting the SME customers, and specifically those SME customers that have much more of a digital nature. So, e-commerce, digital agencies, technology companies, etc. So our real focus in the next couple of years is, one, to kind of continue to double down on that API product set in international markets, both kind of in Australia and beyond, to target those enterprise customers. But secondly, really to kind of build on our APIs and offer a real seamless financial services platform for SMEs, especially these kind of modern SMEs that are more digital in nature.
And I guess talking, if we were going to reference a COVID-19 context, etc. So what are, I guess, rather than talk about many limitations, which could be various, but let's talk about the opportunities created for yourselves, particularly over the last 3 to 4 months. So what have you noticed quickly emerge in terms of your continued expansion globally?
Yeah, so I think for us, we've been pretty lucky that we obviously have a decent presence in China, and I think when COVID-19 hit, it was very similar to SARS, probably around 15 to 20 years ago, and certainly our China colleagues saw a massive transformation, a massive shift to digital due to SARS, right? So that kind of spawned your Alibaba, your JD.com, your Tencent when it came to mobile payments. So we knew, I think from the outset, that there was probably going to be a massive shift in behavior, kind of just behavior in general for consumers. And so we've really kind of focused on that. I mean, we've been lucky in that our mission was always digital first, right? So in a way, kind of our vision has been accelerated probably for a couple of years, but we've just started to continue to double down on these businesses. So digital businesses, e-commerce, we've seen a massive uptick in e-commerce businesses using our platform, and second, technology companies. So those that are operating more like a SaaS, right? That allows them to go international, probably have a lot of international costs, whether it's staff, whether it's subscription costs, really utilizing our platform to make it a pretty seamless financial experience for them.
Cool. And I should have asked actually, so your workforce distribution, where are you? So you're based predominantly in Melbourne at the moment, but do you have other locations wholesale across the world, or are you sort of largely a remote workforce outside of Melbourne? How's it working?
Yeah, we're pretty global. So I think we've got around 10 offices. So kind of all the way from San Fran to London to Singapore to Hong Kong to Shanghai to Australia. Our biggest kind of core offices are in Shanghai and Melbourne. But we are rapidly growing. And I'd say that, we're one of those companies that I think we're truly global from the start. So we don't really have like a head office. And so kind of the remote working has actually been pretty easy and seamless transition for us.
Yeah, great. All right, cool. Well, thank you, Neil. I'll swing back to you shortly as well. Again, referencing, I guess, expansion, growth opportunities and new products, also related to user feedback and experience. Shelli, I'll pass to you now. Thank you for joining us. I'd love for you to tell us a bit about Reach, where you're sort of managing in relation to Australia and Asia, but also how that was born out of a need as part of the Second Century Ventures portfolio, and what that means for the near future for you leading that charge.
Yeah. Perhaps just to backtrack a little bit, we're sort of we're actually the second largest prop tech fund globally, so we're actually pretty big. I suppose compared to some other prop tech funds out there, and that includes fintech, insurance technology, legal technology. For us, we sort of see ourselves as the scale up program for the real estate industry, and not just prop tech, if you like. So any services, marketing, fintech, technology that I suppose if you want your customer to be the real estate sector, then we look at that technology. So it does include DocuSign as legal technology, for example, one of our early investments. But marketing technology, CRMs, robotics, anything and everything that is relevant to the real estate industry. So backtracking, Second Century Ventures is the venture arm for the National Association of Realtors. One of the largest prop tech funds globally. I suppose the key difference is that unlike a lot of venture funds, they've got multiple LPs, limited partners, as investors in the fund, whereas we have one singular limited partner, which is the National Association of Realtors. Being one of the largest strategic investors, we're backed by a not-for-profit. Now, our parent company is actually a not-for-profit. We're a trade group, effectively. And so we have a slightly different mandate than most other venture funds in that we are here to help support the growth of the real estate industry. So, for example, when we look at a piece of technology like DocuSign, we will look at how it actually improves transparency, includes customer service across the entire real estate sector, as opposed to a standalone client. So that's Second Century Ventures is a US-based venture fund. It is, I suppose its head office is Chicago, but, like I suppose a lot of venture funds these days, we're scattered all over. Reach is one of the, it is the scale-up program that, Second Century Ventures developed about 8 years ago. So about 8 years ago, I think we realized with a massive network out of NAR, there's about 1.4 million real estate industry members. We are the largest trade group globally, according to the number of members at least, and that's a lot of customers, potential customers. And so as a result, we've developed the Reach program, and that's been operating really well out of the States. David, I'm sure, knows a couple of these companies. House Canaries, another one in our portfolio, multiple ones, a few exits. August Home is a physical one, physical lock product. So the portfolio has done really well. It's done predominantly US investments, but mind you, a couple of Australian companies who have expanded in the US have actually got into the Reach program. And, I suppose about a year ago, I had a chat to the Reach team because I lived, about 5 years in the States, in New York and Boston. I was actually, after the GFC, I went there to buy real estate, and I really looked at how PropTech started over there. And so I've got a lot of connections out there and saw the gap in Australia. There was a lot of FinTech around, which is fantastic. I love seeing that coming back from overseas, but there was a gap for PropTech, and that's starting to happen now. It's certainly a need. COVID has certainly changed things with a lot of real estate. But yeah, the Reach program is now in Australia, but sort of covering APAC, UK, Canada as well. So really taking on the global expansion. And from my mandate is really to cover the APAC region. So we look at technology globally. So anyone can apply to the Reach program globally. For us, I will only take on board technology that is relevant to the real estate industry in my region. And the sector here is quite different to the US. So yeah, that's basically a little bit of background and what I'm looking for. We made about 6 investments in December, and it is across the region. So I can sort of talk more about that. But yeah, very much aggressively growing out here, a US-backed venture fund looking to support the growth of the real estate industry.
Great, Shelli. And if we're going to talk about, just for clarity, so in regards to Reach, does that stick to a set program timeline during the year? What does that look like upcoming, or have we just passed, and what does that look like for emerging cohorts?
Yeah, so we are certainly one of the venture funds still investing, actively investing. I know some venture funds are, doubling down on their existing portfolio. We last year we launched the program in July. We opened applications in September. We made our first 6 investments in December, and the program itself, it's a 9-month program. So it's not a co-located accelerator; it's a scale-up accelerator. So it's a sales and marketing accelerator. So you need to reach a certain level of scalability. Our earliest companies are late seed stage companies, and most of those sort of late seed stage companies already have clients like Savills and CBRE, big clients on board. And that's sort of my earliest companies. So we tend to sort of focus on Series A, Series B companies because of the massive reach we can, power, if you like. So the applications obviously are closed, and we've got 6 companies in the cohort now. They will be graduating in September. We actually were meant to open applications around this time, this year for next year, but obviously with COVID, we have pushed timelines out a little bit. We are right now looking at opening applications in October for a February kickoff next year. And again, being a sales and marketing program, we don't need the teams to be located in our region. They need to be able to fly in to sort of join the program. But in saying that, though, obviously a lot of things are now virtual, so it's certainly made things a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, right. I can only imagine. So I'm going to pose a question basically to all of you, but you would all approach it in, I guess, relatively different ways in relation to user feedback, rapid product development, etc. Whether from products you've been involved in already or ones that are emerging on the horizon. Shelli, obviously your context may be that we're talking about groups that come into the cohort and how you see they respond to market needs, user research and so on. But would anyone like to start and talk about, I guess, that process of hearing from customers and user feedback and rapidly developing as reaction? David, maybe you want to kick off since I've left you the longest between responses and started with you before.
Sure. I'll give a short version of this answer. I actually gave a lecture at Y Combinator Startup School about product market fit and how to find product market fit. So that's available on YouTube, and that's an hour-long answer to this question. But I think the short of it is obviously that you need to iterate frequently, and you need to go through short iteration cycles, because no one's version 1 is the thing that is successful. It's everyone's version like 57 that's successful. And then when you iterate, you obviously need to talk to lots of customers and get their feedback. I think the key thing that people tend to misunderstand, everyone loves to talk about the Steve Jobs quote about that he said famously that he didn't listen to, what customers said they wanted, and he just built them what they needed or something like that, right? And I think what people really misunderstand is that Apple spends a disproportionate amount of time understanding what the customer problem is. They just don't go and design the customer's proposed solution. And I think that's what Steve Jobs was talking about, which is what's very helpful is to listen to your customers describe their problems and describe their pain, and then figure out what's the best solution you can design to solve that. And he's absolutely right that when a customer says, I want a faster horse, right? Then there's probably a better solution than a faster horse than their proposed solution. But it's just so absolutely critical to understand what their pain points and what their problems are, so you can design solutions around that.
And I guess from you personally, what sort of, some elements of that have you influenced by bringing from your experience within Weebly into the Square fold, and how are you sort of seeing, your expertise and influence sort of progress through the new products that you're developing? Sure.
Square, I was surprised for I thought of Square as like a larger company, when we joined, and Square is just has this incredible customer-centric culture where everything draws from customer feedback and some form of customer development. I think what we did just with the online products, which obviously became very much front and center as COVID was really spreading rapidly. And and sometimes there's time for customer feedback, and at times there's things that are just obvious, right? And when COVID started spreading, the desire for curbside pickup. It was just obvious, right? So it became less of a, hey, can we get the perfect thing and figure out what the perfect thing is, and much more of a, hey, if we just get the whole team together, how quickly can we get this out the door? Turns out we got that one out the door in about 48 hours. And we got delivery, which was a feature we planned to ship in about 3 months. We got that out in a week. And so, that's obviously not how you typically go and just throw away your roadmap and just build entirely new features. But there's certainly a time and a place for it when things are changing so quickly, like they were when the pandemic first started spreading.
Yeah, for sure. Look, Neil, I'm not going to skip you, but I might go to Shelli to talk about, I guess, a cohort experience in that regard, and then come back to you, and then I'll slug you with 2 questions in a row, essentially. But Shelli, would you like to dive into that and talk about, I guess, how some of the programs respond to, just reiterate that point about customer needs, quick feedback, and obviously, I guess, a nimble approach to product market fit?
Yeah, I mean, look, the COVID situation is probably a classic example of what we're seeing, the strong companies, the companies that are, lean and able to adapt. I'm quite impressed with the 48-hour turnaround David mentioned, but we're certainly seeing for us, with the fact with digital products, we can work from home straight away. And what we're seeing is, particularly with the real estate sector, the retail sector is being hit pretty hard, the hospitality sector, but, even office space. So what we're finding with our 6 cohort companies is that, previously lead times for digital transformation was like, well, it's important, but it's not really a priority. Whereas now they're very much like in panic and saying, my God, we actually need to work from home. We need to put our entire agency from home. We need to cut our car space spend. Ubi Park's one of our companies that sort of help moderate a lot of car space, So we've seen a massive drop off for a lot of the airports in terms of parking need, but the office space people are very much realizing that, wow, we actually don't need 100 car spaces. We need 20, and with the ongoing changes of work from home, well, actually this trend was already on the books, right? And Neil obviously spoke about SARS and how that sort of shaped things, and we believe obviously there's going to be a impetus for a longer term change, and I was actually speaking to some of the banks this morning, about their real estate clients, what do they need? And so parking is one of the key areas where we have just listened to customers, or that team has listened to customers and said, we need to get rid of all this parking space. We've been paying for it and we don't need it, and so there's a lot of these guys are really now offering solutions. These big sort of owners of large office space buildings, they're actually sharing with their tenants, hey, this is actually, the space that you were paying for, car space next door, you can get rid of that now and just use our app and sort of have an Airbnb model within your own building, sharing with multiple tenants, right? Yeah. And that's a sort of opportunity that we're seeing happen, with a lot of our companies. They're actually, we hit a bit of a pause for a couple of weeks because people just, I think, mentally had to shift. But where our companies are actually busier than ever, the sort of some things have certainly gone up in need, but our companies are, the ones that are really listening, have reshaped things. Some sectors have taken a hit, but government are now really spending, because they have to keep jobs. And so we're certainly seeing some technology really helping to save costs, because you'll find that a lot of these companies will still have to, even though they need to cut staff, they still need to do operational things. And so we're sort of seeing opportunities come in and help save the day, if you like, and the sales cycles for these things, for the companies that can pivot quickly and are listening, able to package their product rapidly, able to sort of, leverage through that and obviously manage their cash flow as well. Listening to this COVID situation has actually offered us a lot more opportunity to help the real estate sector, and that includes banking and FinTech products. So yeah, seeing a lot of, I think the good, robust companies will always find opportunities, and we're certainly seeing that in the COVID environment. Yeah,
great. All right, look, we'll come back to some of those points, I guess, as we round it out, because I just want to reiterate, the time goes really fast in these 1 hour presentations. It just rapidly accelerates. I want to invite everyone who's attending today. Again, if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A function. Don't want you to miss out, and I'll essentially curate that as we go. There was a question in there, but I'll come back to it just so person who's posed it knows. But Neil, before losing that point on, I guess, expansion and listening to customers and developing according to the research and the needs conveyed by customers, do you want to talk about a little bit about the Airwallex process, if you will, and some interesting notions related to that in recent times?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely reiterate both kind of what David and Shelli said, which is kind of really important to understand customer needs and customer pain points. And I think one of the things that we've started doing at Airwallex is actually kind of have a framework around that, and we kind of call that jobs to be done. It's a pretty well-known framework, but it very tries to articulate what are the jobs or what are the needs of that customer, and therefore what are you building that solves that customer. So it's kind of a framework we use, and essentially tries to really allow a robust way for innovation rather than just taking big bets. Right, so you kind of really articulate what are your customer pain points, and then how you solve them. And so one example is, we launched virtual cards recently as part of our product launch. Our initial hypothesis was, hey, people just want these cards because you can save money on subscription costs. So for businesses, cash flow is pretty important, and that helps. And then when we talked to some customers, there was very innovative ways they were using this. So one was just creating multiple virtual cards, and he basically put one subscription on every card. And he just said, look, it's an easy way for me to manage, and kind of, if I want to cancel a subscription, I can just cancel the card, and it's done. And so that job or that need was actually not just cash flow or kind of savings. It was also just control. I need control over my subscriptions. I need to figure out a more systematic and easy way to manage those subscription costs.
Yeah.
The second thing we found was, a lot of these tech companies have AWS costs in US dollar. Well, they're spending quite a lot on AWS. They probably want one of these cards. And then when we talk to kind of some of these people, they're like, hey, I not only want the cards, is there a way to kind of hedge my FX so I have more predictability around my finance budget? And so when we talk about the jobs to be done, it's actually not saving money, it's actually predictability around the budget. So that type of insight, that type of conversation is super important to define what you think that customer problem is, and therefore being able to build the right product to address those problems.
Great. Look, I'm going to verge into, I guess, new user acquisition now. So I guess both in terms of that complementary user engagement and retention, but lean into now this user acquisition context. So under what circumstances are users predominantly gravitating to Airwallex? And what's, for these new users, what seems to be, I guess, the greatest problem that needs to be solved for them at this point in time that you've recognised, whether related to COVID, etc., or just generally across the Airwallex journey?
Yeah, so I think I touch on. So I think Airwallex, the platform we built is very much B2B, right? So it's kind of for businesses. So just kind of being very clear that that's kind of the customer segment that we're really after. Being a FinTech, we're really trying to offer just an alternative to existing financial services. And a lot of the pain points you have for existing businesses is, I want to talk to someone to solve some of my business needs, and I can't get hold of them. I want to be able to create a bank account overseas, and it's very time consuming to do that. I want to give cards to my employees, and there's a lot of paperwork involved. So we're really trying to simplify a lot of those processes, while at the same time having a very cost effective solution to do that. So a lot of businesses, I think certainly in Australia and I think globally, probably have a pretty negative view of incumbent financial services. And that's kind of something that we really try to, I guess, leverage and offer an alternative that's much easier. And with SMEs, there's always two pain points, right? There's always short on cash, right? There's that cash flow is an issue, and they're always short on time. So kind of time or simplicity is attractive to them. And so we're really trying to nail both of those, whether it's kind of onboarding with us, whether it's using our product. They're the two things we're really trying to nail.
Yeah, great. Look, I'm going to focus on partnerships. I'll pose this to you, David, and also the acquisition of new users. Neil, by all means, if something else comes up that you want to inject with, please do. But David, I'll lean to yourself, and Shelli, by the same token, after David, I'll come into the realm of partnerships and so on. David, so under what circumstances are, I guess, traditional bricks and mortar operators utilising e-commerce with, say, Square online store, and what types of specific businesses are we starting to see shift online in a greater percentage that you've sort of recognised, if you can tell us from a trends and new users acquisition perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest trends has been that the traditional lines between businesses, these rigid lines that define a restaurant or a retailer or a service-based business, are really starting to blur, and not just starting to blur, but are completely blurred. And so, we see a lot of restaurants, for example, and there's some great examples here that that obviously with the shutdown that came into place, had to find new ways of doing business, and maybe they had just only ever sold in person, all of a sudden have to figure out how to sell online, and they have to figure out how to fulfill pickup orders and delivery orders. We've seen restaurants that moved into groceries or hard to find retail items, restaurants that offer meals as a donation to frontline, first responders, or even restaurants that will, as more of a full service kind of restaurant, a restaurant that offers a meal kit that then they have a Zoom call that evening with the chef who teaches that, who gives a cooking lesson to teach everyone how to prepare the meal. And so I think in that example, you'll see what was typically, a very traditional food and beverage business turns into, food and beverage plus retail, plus services, plus nonprofit, and you have sort of all this mixed together. And so, so I think, restaurants were certainly a big adopter of Square Online Store to get online for the first time. Actually, there's one example, Mark and Vinny's in Sydney, that, always just had walk-ins and just in-person service. And then, did have to let go some of their staff, but were actually able to retain half of their staff just by moving online through Square Online Store. And so, certainly restaurants were one, retail is another really big one. But really, it's been businesses of all shapes and sizes that have expanded online. And, there is a lot of strength that comes out of this. If there is a silver lining, it's that, a lot of businesses were, like we had talked about earlier, a bit behind the curve in terms of, a lot of SMEs, especially a bit behind the curve in terms of digitizing their operations and, having a digital platform to run their business, and a lot still on pen and paper and still running their business that way. And, with systems that weren't really connected. And, I think coming out of this, what we'll see is we'll see a lot of SMEs now, forced to go through a very rapid transition, but, potentially the ones that do act quickly, that do adopt this kind of technology, may even have the opportunity to grow out of the pandemic instead of just get back to where they were. They'll have more efficiency, they'll have a direct channel, they can engage their repeat customers and really have, as opposed to sort of letting, all their customer acquisition kind of scatter away into apps and marketplaces, they'll be able to bring a lot of that back and make it direct.
Yeah, for sure. Look, thank you for painting that picture. Yeah, it's great to hear. I mean, obviously there's a number of seasonal opportunities, but with such a quickly changing sort of environment, and obviously we mentioned to you before that here in Melbourne we're about to go into lockdown again, just as some, I guess, small business operators that are just taking that leap into utilising new forms of digital payments. All of a sudden they're faced with some difficult tasks, I guess, but certain food and beverage operators had, by the same token, in terms of opportunities, in the previous lockdown gravitated towards some form of digital payments with pickup system that had never sort of enabled that type of action before. So there, at the very least, there's some small constellations set up for the upcoming time, as hard as it may be, for some increased business. Shelli, I might come to you in regards to partnerships, maybe from a different tact, talk about, I guess, from a global partnership perspective. You mentioned Reach leverages a number of global partnerships across, I think it was around 85 countries, and you've got 1.4 million executives within real estate and adjacent industries. How does, I guess, future growth for both Reach and Second Century Ventures, I guess, manifest in the near future, based on this extensive network and I guess emerging partnerships as a result?
Yeah. I mean, NAR, National Association of Realtors, our parent company, I suppose being the large real estate industry body, it does have sort of connections and relationships with, a lot of other real estate institutes out there globally. So that's sort of where the bilateral agreements are in sort of 85 countries. And that includes, for the Australians, the real estate institutes out here as well, sort of a co-sharing kind of relationship. And obviously any technology they invest in that's relevant to their sector and their region, we sort of are a platform for that communication. And so any companies we invest in, I suppose, can leverage a lot of that network. But on top of that also, I suppose, if you're comparing an accelerator run by, a typical corporate, and technically, we are funded by one particular entity. The difference between us is with so many members, we can't really prioritize the needs of, say, one CBRE over their competitor, for example. We look at technology as a whole. And so our program is developed as an industry support as opposed to, because NAR and SCV are a 22-person venture capital team, right? We look at thousands of pieces of technology every single day. That's our full-time job, but a smaller real estate agency here, I mean, a lot of them are small SMEs, they can't build a massive technology company. Like technology, the rate of that development is just growing so quickly, right? And how can you compare one platform with another? So, a lot of our partnerships relates to bringing on a lot of the real estate industry banking partners as well. Again, a couple of the banking partners we have a venture team already, but it's certainly not a 22-person team. It is a 5-person team. Sometimes some of the real estate groups have 1 or 2 people in their venture arm. So for us, we're sort of we see ourselves as an add-on, an additional add-on for the real estate industry partners, banking, insurance as well. A lot of those guys really can tap into what we do, what we look at every single day, and leverage our expertise, our knowledge. And for us, we obviously invest into these companies, but at the same time, we sort of help promote technology as a whole that's beneficial to the industry. And so a lot of, for example, some of our partnerships does include some of the banking partners, some of the, big commercial real estate corporates, but also the real estate agencies in the residential space, retail as well, legal. A lot of these guys actually come in and support us by mentoring. We've got well over 80 mentors in our sort of our mentor community. They're all sort of C-suites and heads of innovation. And they come in because they don't have a 22-person team to look at technology every day. They look at technology really based on what their current business unit needs are, but they can really leverage what our sort of expertise is, and we can help support them. And on the other side, the real estate startups can really, if they've got technology that's relevant to the industry, they can leverage our connections into those areas. So it's again, a sales and marketing kind of model, and a lot of our partnerships are related to the industry that want to look for pilots. They want to look for technology. Even our banking and media partners, they're there because they're clients, legal accounting firms, their real estate clients are being hit right now. And they are partnering with us because they actually want to know what kind of technologies can help their clients. Because you're no longer just providing a legal service. You're not just providing an accounting service. I think every business is in the business of helping their clients right now. So I think that's sort of where we sort of see ways we can grow and partner with other organizations. And go back to David as well, around the retail sector of buying and picking up things. We're actually seeing retail, individual smaller shops needing to do that. I think the big Woolworths and these guys, Big W and all them, have the sort of, buy and pick up online. But the smaller shops, how can we help them leverage a platform? And we're quite keen to talk to retail technology that can help the smaller businesses get online logistically, and that's met to us. We can go out to a shopping center to help with that process. That's where we're the conduit for a lot of the partnerships.
Okay, great. Look, I'd love to, as we get towards the end, what I'll do, I'll ask you a question, Shelli, which was posed during the Q&A. I do invite anyone, as we get to the end, to put any final questions in there, because we'll quickly get there. But then I'll come back to yourselves, David and Neil, and Shelli by the same turn. I'd actually love to know your thoughts on opportunities less about, I guess, partnerships in a small business and organisational perspective, but I guess the role that universities could play in growing initiatives, whether your own initiatives that you're running, or I guess some exemplars, both locally or globally, that you've recognised where universities got involved and actually delivered some benefit for both the commercial and potentially societal benefit. So I'll leave you with that just to sort of ponder. I don't like to sort of slug it right out of the gate. But Shelli, before leaning into that question with everyone, FA has asked, where do you see Australian property transparency platforms compared to American sites like Zillow? So why is it so hard to get market data within Australia?
Good question. Yeah, thank you for the question. So look, it is starting to happen. I think one of the key things about collecting data and getting better with data is, you can collect data, but what do you do with it? And it's not useful unless there's some sort of interpretation, right? I think there's plenty of data out there, but using it in a business case scenario is where I think that there's a gap, and I think you need to look at why is Australian data less accessible? Well, it's a scalability problem. US, the number of people buying, selling homes, there's just more data to train the algorithm. And for an accurate algorithm, you need plenty of data. So there are websites like CoreLogic. Obviously, we're actually, with our application pipeline, we've actually seen a lot more data players come in. But in terms of our market size, we're just not a massive market, and so as a result, we probably don't have a ton of data to play with, and interpreting that to valuations, for example. But we're certainly seeing a couple come into play now. Banks are actually getting into this now. They're getting into it on assessing, lending, assessing lending. And so I know for me, when I was looking at property recently, that the valuations on Domain, you can actually click that through and monitor that now. So that is starting to happen. But I think it's sort of one of those things that it's longer term value. For a lot of these existing, like our equivalent of Zillow, Domain, real estate, group, those guys are doing really well. They're collecting classified, cash, in terms of advertising, right? So I suppose there's a lack of competition, a lack of data. That's certainly a challenge in itself. And then the other flip side is, well, how do you make money from the data? And Zillow's obviously seen that as a longer term value add strategy, and Domain's starting to pick that up. And the banks are really starting to pick that up on the valuation side, because again, all these partners need to find why are we doing this? What does it mean? And a lot of that data helps driving longer term customer engagement. And so it might not be immediately useful. Consumers are not willing to pay for it. That's probably also the other reason why we haven't actually seen these platforms really show a lot of property, transparency. But I think things are certainly starting to change. It's just the environment, lack of customers here. When you're building a platform for 25 million people versus 200 million people, the scalability of it is a question mark. But I don't know if that sort of takes care of it, but the university side of things, look, whether we're talking about an acquisition of talent, whether we're talking about commercialization of research, I'd love to hear your unfiltered thoughts, I guess. Yeah. Well, it's funny because, like I said, 3 of our companies are actually adopting AI. Oxstrata actually works with the University of Auckland with their R&D teams, because they use a lot of AI in their technology. They're sort of, they're zero for strata management. So think of it that way. They plug into and they automate the fact that, for example, strata managers, look, when there's a late invoice, it can automatically ping them and sort of force a payment, there's just routine tasks in strata management that can be automated. And so their AI actually helps with that process and automates something like 90% of sort of, the accounts, which is amazing. But Auckland University is actually, one of the R&D teams, helping with that process. So on an R&D level, certainly we've been tapping into the universities to open up, what their research is. I think that the challenge with universities is actually talking about what they're doing, talking about and promoting what they're doing, so that we know, hey, you've got a department doing this, specializing in this area. and we can tap you in for that. Because I think visibility is certainly a problem for us, and knowing, where the specialties are for certain universities and where they want to play. We're seeing a lot of medical technology. That's a really obvious one. But some of the real estate technology is where, transparency of data, like that's a really good question mark, right? And so we're certainly leveraging universities in terms of, research and development. My teams are obviously in a much later stage and they're always looking for new products and improving their products. But outside of that also, one of our other companies, PAM, actually does wayfinding for massive precincts, and universities are actually adopting this. They're actually, UTS and I think UTS and ANU are actually using their platforms for wayfinding for O Week, because again, a lot of the static signage is not great for O Week when you need to change things on the go. So I think universities would be great to have more as customers. Obviously they've done a great job with Airwallex, MAP, Melbourne Uni. I'm alumni, so I'm very proud of that. But I'd love more engagement with universities overall about what they're doing research-wise. I know I came from QUT managing their investment fund, and a lot of that disconnect, I'm just saying disconnect overall with all universities, is the research department doesn't talk to the commercialization department, and then the outside businesses, like VCs, like us, who are making investments, and want to help improve the companies. But hiring, like there needs to be subject, like a proper semester on how to work for a startup. That's something I'd love to pioneer, actually, because there's so much around being a founder, which is great. You need to start with that. But universities need to train, like we have problems hiring people who are startup mentality ready. In the US, it's just part and parcel. It's a really clear option as a career, whereas I don't think that's very well promoted here, and certainly the startup, hey, that's an option. If you want to be a founder, well, maybe as an additional option, work for a startup first, make some mistakes there first, as another option, because most people work for a Google. So those are sort of university spaces somewhere I'm quite passionate about, and I want to focus on education. But there's a lot of universities can do. Engaging with alumni, like that's another one for another day perhaps. But alumni is certainly another one that we'd love to see more engagement on as well.
Look, and we're not entirely dependent on a physical environment in totality, like Melbourne Connect, which is coming up, but definitely a core objective of that is to have more, researcher initiatives right for commercialization or partnership, put on a pedestal so people can engage with it and understand a bit more, rather than have it behind closed doors, essentially. So, but look, you've conveyed the same thing, just much smarter than me. Look, thank you, Shelli. As we get towards the end, David, I'll throw to yourself. Left you hanging, stewing of the thoughts, but whether we're talking about related to, acquisition of talent to suit Square's opportunities, e-commerce industry as a whole, or so on, or some other opportunities regarding to commercialization of research or finding more founders. What's sort of some of your initial thoughts relating to that?
Sure. I mean, I can speak to my experience. So I started Weebly out of undergrad, and I think Shelli had a pretty smart answer on the commercialization and the research and more the graduate side. But I think around undergrad, if I look at my story personally, Weebly started as part of a class project, and the class project was just very open-ended. The goal of the entire class was just write a web app, and so that's one thing that ended up sparking this thing that kind of grew, right? And I think that to the extent that that what you're doing with Melbourne Connect sounds really great, because I think just getting people to connect with each other, finding the students that have a passion for starting a company, giving them some education so that they're just not starting from zero, but they can sort of, avoid some of those mistakes, really giving them the opportunity to find each other and connect with each other is really powerful. I think at the end of the day, the people, Penn State did it pretty well, but the people who really do it best, like when you look at MIT and Stanford, one of the things they do too is they give you the opportunity to leave for a while and strike while the iron's hot, and then come back. And, and both those schools will let you come back within something like 10 or 15 years and finish your degree if you'd like. And, and then what they both do as well is kind of understand, at Penn State, there was this desire to keep everyone in State College, and let's have them start their companies here in State College, right? With this, of course, with the desire to bring economic impact. But I think when the university takes a little bit more of a longer term view and understands that, okay, they that company might move out, or they might go international, or they might be distributed, like Airwallex, but at the end of the day, when you do have the companies that start out of the universities, it all ends up coming back, right? It ends up coming back in terms of mentorship, in terms of donations, in terms of just general, aspirational stories, or in terms of just the kind of knowledge at the university and who's attracted to it. So, I think, just connecting students, giving them the flexibility to, potentially take fewer credits or really work on their idea, letting them leave with the opportunity to come back. And then understanding that, that the company is going to go wherever it needs to be successful, but that doesn't mean they're abandoning the university. Like, they will be back when things are going well to help out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, thank you. Thanks for conveying that and some real life examples. It's an ongoing, I guess, problem to solve. But the effort is worth it if you put in the work. Neil, I'd love to go to you before we round out with the final one sentence thoughts. Tell us about what you think some opportunities are from that, I guess, industry and university engagement perspective.
Yeah, sure. I mean, very similar themes to what Shelli and David mentioned, but if you look at kind of the Airwallex story, the original founders actually went to university together, right? And that's kind of where they actually built that rapport and kind of that connection to start Airwallex. And so I think echoing kind of some of the things that Shelli talked about, I think at university, there definitely is room for, certainly in Australia, I think there's definitely room for kind of the education around, hey, entrepreneurship and startup is actually a legitimate career opportunity and a career path. I think certainly when I went to university, that wasn't really talked about, right? Everyone just thought, hey, get a degree, go to a corporate job, right? That was kind of the path forward. Yeah, so I think investment in that is definitely worthwhile. And then on the commercialization side of things, I think there are certain people that really want to go into kind of more research area, but I think there is probably lack of education around how that can then become commercialized. From a business perspective, and potentially that is a hurdle for some people wanting to pursue some of those paths. So again, I think more support or more education and transparency around that would be super helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I want to thank you all so much for outlining so eloquently all that you're doing, both in terms of strategic growth for your respective organizations, companies and projects, and also for appearing today and speaking on all the things that you're working on, but also some wider thoughts about, collaboration, partnerships, growth, user acquisition and more. I really appreciate it. Thanks, FA, for tuning in with the question. But look, once again, Neil, David and Shelli, thank you for appearing. All the very best with all that's coming up in the near future. If you've got any final thoughts, please do put them out there. But I'm getting, while we do this, I'm going to get go for it, David.
I think it's hard to see now, but there will be a time in the future when the pandemic is not all that we're talking about. But I think the longer lasting effects are going to be all the transformation and change that happens through this. And so I think, it is in many ways the silver lining that will probably come out of this is all of the adaptation that is going to happen, all of the change. And that is going to be the lasting impression it leaves us with. And I do believe at the end of the day that we can come out of it stronger. Businesses can come out of it stronger. Individuals can. And so while difficult, there will be days when we look back at this as a very transformational time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, David. All the very best to you as well. I know that, we're in our Melbourne context and you've got your San Francisco context. So I hope everything goes well over the coming period. Maybe difficult times, but regardless, we're looking at the positives and opportunities to come out this time. So thanks once again. Look, Shelli, Neil, thanks again. I keep saying thank you over and over, so there you go. Before I throw to and Zara, I'm going to spotlight your graphic recording in just 1 second. So here's a representation of the conversation today. Thank you very much, Zara, as always. It's fantastic. We'll publish this out on the social media channels for Melbourne Connect. Also, just to reiterate, we will publish this event on the Melbourne Connect YouTube channel. So that'll be published out in the next couple of days. And we'll continue running Melbourne Connect events, which you can find on the website, melbourneconnect.com. On that, our next topic in the advancing stream will be focused on health technology, then investment. So we've got a few events still to come, and we're really excited about delivering them. With that, I'm out. Thanks very much all for appearing today. I really appreciate it. David, I'll let you get on with your evening, but all will see you very soon, and thanks again.